If I asked you what, in your opinion, was the most memorable movie soundtrack or score ever made, what would your answer be? For most people, it would be in movies like Star Wars, Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, maybe Indiana Jones or James Bond, or something along those lines. Well, aside from almost all of them being made by John Williams, there's one other similarity that they all have, and that is they all sound so vastly different from what we hear in movies today. From when John Williams single-handedly revived the golden age of movie scoring with Star Wars in 1977 to now, the director's needs for what a score needs to contribute to a movie have changed. The rise of more modern techniques in filmmaking has completely changed the process of film scoring. The focus has shifted now from the orchestration and composition of film scores to their sound design and music production, and perhaps no composer has been able to do this better than Academy Award winner Hans Zimmer. Hailed as one of the best composers in all of Hollywood, Zimmer has written and composed the scores for many critically acclaimed movies, such as The Dark Knight, Lion King, Interstellar, Inception, Pirates of the Caribbean, Gladiator, and even more. But what sets Zimmer in a class of his own is his ability to create a set of sounds for a particular movie that work perfectly with the mood, the visuals, and the underlying story to create a cohesive and powerful work of art. How does he do this? That's what I'll go through in this video. Developed by German composer Richard Wagner, a leitmotif is a technique wherein specific instruments or musical themes are assigned to individual characters or events. What's special about Zimmer is that he uses this extensively in a lot of his best scores, just with a little twist. Instead of associating musical themes with a character, he associates them instead with emotions or ideas in the world of the characters. An example of this use of the leitmotif is in the movie Interstellar. Interstellar is a scientific fiction movie that's essentially about time travel, but the movie score doesn't sound anything like that of any other sci-fi movie. Why? Well, put simply, it was because of his and director Christopher Nolan's process of writing and composing the music for the movie.
It was very important to me that the music not pay any attention to the genre of the film. What I wanted to do was to engage Hans in a very pure creative process.
Chris said to me, if he were to write one page of something, and he wouldn't tell me what the movie was about, but he'd just write one page, would I give him one day, and just whatever came to my mind, I would start writing.
What I wrote for Hans to get him started was some dialogue that I'd written for the film mixed with some ideas behind the film without any indications as to genre or scale.
This is, of course, where Chris gets tricky, really about a father and his relationship to his son. It's only later on that I found out that the son wasn't a son at all, it was a daughter. I sat down and I wrote this piece really about what it feels like to be a father and what it feels like to have a son, and I was writing about my son.
When he played me the piece of music which became the basis for the entire score, I thought it was absolutely perfect and captured the emotional qualities of the film that I wanted. And it was at that point that I told him that it was actually a large-scale science fiction film. I hadn't given him any clues about that.
Though the score that resulted from this first process was just a draft, Zimmer decided to use a similar musical theme and build the score of the movie around the themes of the movie, as opposed to just the characters. As a result, all of the scenes including the father and daughter, or even the general theme of their relationship, are accompanied by this emotional piece, and it's most relevant in 3 such scenes. First is in the beginning of the movie when the father and daughter, or Cooper and Murph respectively, chase down a drone through a cornfield together.
Take the wheel, Tom. Go, go, go.
Keep that aim right at me.
Then, it's used in a scene near the middle of the movie, in which Cooper goes through the messages that Murph had been sending him for the past 23 years.
Hey, Dad.
And finally, it's used at the very end of the movie, when Cooper meets a very old Murph after almost a century of them being apart.
You told him I like farming.
Due to this constant association between the emotional scenes in the movie with this musical theme, it becomes a leitmotif for that emotion, and whenever it plays, it signals to us that the characters in the scene are going through the same emotion. Another example of this is in the movie Inception. To understand what Hans Zimmer did for this movie, we first need to know a little bit about it. Inception is essentially about dreams, and dreams within dreams, and more dreams within those dreams, and it's likely the most confusing movie you will ever watch. But here's a little explanation from my good friend Leonardo DiCaprio.
When we're asleep, our mind can do almost anything. Now in a dream, we create and perceive our world simultaneously. That allows us to get right in the middle of that process.
3 layers down, dreams are going to collapse.
Sedation. For sleep, the compound we'll be using to share the dream creates a very clear connection between dreamers whilst actually accelerating brain function.
In other words, it gives us more time on each level.
Brain function in the dream will be about 20 times normal.
How do we get out?
A kick.
What's a kick?
It's that feeling of falling you get that jolts you awake. It snaps you out of the dream. The trick is to synchronize a kick that can penetrate all 3 levels.
We could use the musical countdown to synchronize the different kicks.
Wait, nope, that's important. They use a musical countdown, as in a song, to synchronize the time across 3 different timelines, each slower than the one before. This is quite confusing to understand in the movie just like that, because this means there will be specific characters that move through time slower in different settings. So how do we know the speed of time in each setting? Thanks to Zimmer, we know through the music. What Zimmer did is he integrated the song into the movie as a reference for real time. For example, here's the song they use in the movie. Here's the song slowed down to fit the time in the movie. And then finally, here is the score at that point in the movie. See the similarity? Zimmer represents the passage of time on each level of the dream by slowing down the song that's used as a reference and then building that version of the song into its own piece of the score. Lastly, let's explore the score for The Dark Knight. What's interesting in this movie is not only how Zimmer designs leitmotifs for the Joker and Batman, but also how they work together. In writing music for the Joker, Zimmer recorded, distorted, and combined several unsettling sounds to produce a theme that really fuses metallic buzzing and scratching sounds with a single long and sustained note. Eventually, out of the sustained note, a second note emerges that gradually slides upward, and this gives the theme a very unsettling sound that you can usually hear right away when it plays in a scene.
Well, hello, beautiful. You must be Harvey.
In the theme, the sustained note is a D note, and the upward sliding note is also yet another D note, but this one has a glissando, or a glide from one pitch to another higher pitch. The whole thing is also then accompanied at the same time with a crescendo. This theme is an example of my previous point about how Zimmer can create a sound to perfectly fit the world he's describing, as the theme for the Joker is a perfect audio description of him, because every time we hear this theme in the movie, we're immediately made aware that the Joker is not only present, but more often than not in control of the situation, which he usually is in the movie. Now, let's take a look at Batman's theme. This theme is a simple and brassy sounding D and F note combination, though it was largely carried over from Batman Begins. As the character of Batman develops in the movie, his score does too. Throughout the movie, Batman is constantly confronted with situations that make him question his legitimacy as a crime-fighting symbol, and Zimmer reflects this theme of self-doubt in the score by sometimes sounding the first F note along with a C sharp, creating a more awkward sound, leaving us slightly unsettled and confused like Batman himself. Lastly, let's analyze how Zimmer uses their themes to create a deeper connection between Batman and the Joker. When you hear both themes, they might sound worlds apart, like the Batman and the Joker, but if you dig a little deeper, there are some defining similarities between the two. Though the sliding D note in the Joker theme doesn't explicitly rise up to a higher pitch as in Batman's theme, it does slowly glissando to a higher pitch, closer to an F note. Along with this, both scores also have a similar crescendo and at the same time. The two musical themes, therefore, suggest a theme present throughout the movie, the duality in Batman and the Joker. It's a musical representation of how they're two sides of the same coin. Both characters are essentially freaks that flout the society's laws for their own ends. It's just that one does it for good while the other does it for evil.
Why do you want to kill me? I don't want to kill you.
In all of these examples, you can see that the way Zimmer fundamentally approaches a score is different. Instead of simply making the score to represent something, he aims to explore how two things are connected to each other. Instead of telling you what to feel, he tells you what the characters are feeling and lets you decide what to feel for yourself. He conveys through music the little details that the director can't. Zimmer's score doesn't just add to the movie, it completes the movie. It rounds out the movie, making it real. Zimmer's genius isn't in making the score memorable, it's in how he makes it relevant.